Hi, it's Grandpa Bill again. The Lord took me on another little vision recently. But to explain that so that you have a better understanding, I need to tell you that I died recently and the Lord didn't really want me home right then. And while I was with Him, He showed me a place that I called the land of the shadow of death. You see, everything was dark and dreary, and people were caught up in things like gangs and drugs and alcohol and sex trafficking. Things that really would hold them away from finding the Lord. And the reason He brought me back was He wanted me to talk about things like that. Well, He has been prompting me lately to talk about something. In fact, just 2 nights ago was when I went on this latest little excursion into this land of the shadow of death. So I think I need first to explain what I've come to believe is this land of the shadow of death. And I discovered in Matthew 4, verses 12 through 17, something that explained it to me. Here's what it says. When Jesus heard that John had been put in prison, he withdrew to Galilee, leaving Nazareth. He went and lived in Capernaum, which was by the lake in the area of Zebulun and Naphtali, to fulfill what was said through the prophet Isaiah. Land of Zebulun and land of Naphtali, the way of the sea beyond the Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles. The people living in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned. From that time on, Jesus began to preach, "Repent, for the kingdom of heaven has come near." From that I realized that this land of the shadow of death is where we live. That darkness is an absence of the light of God. There are so many people now that don't know the Lord that darkness is really becoming oppressive.
He was warmer than a summer breeze. He was softer than his silver hair. He was brighter than the twinkle in his eye as he rested in his easy chair. And I remember how he used to smile and tell me all about the folks back then. And if I had my way, you know I'd be there today, and I'd do it all over again.
I was so shaken by what I saw that I had to write it down, and so I'm going to read it to you as I wrote it so that I get it right. I started out writing, I traveled through a place that was dark and lost. I saw a young girl living next to a garbage dumpster, one of those large roll-off trash bins. Then suddenly I found myself on top of the trash bin, which was filled with dirt and trash. When I looked closer, I saw hands, arms, and feet and legs of babies. They were protruding out of the dirt. They'd been just thrown away, just thrown into that trash bin and covered with dirt. God made me see this over and over again so I would remember it. Young girls are killing their babies and throwing them away as if they were nothing but trash. They think that they are successful in covering up their unbelievable sin. But it can still be seen. You see, God can see it, and he's becoming disgusted with it. His anger is turning into wrath. America, wake up, because there's really no time left. We're living in the last seconds of the last days. God is about to unleash his fury at any moment. While I was there, I felt so bad for my part in what had happened that I ran and fell at Jesus' feet and asked for forgiveness. And I was begging for peace in the light of what I had just witnessed. You see, I haven't spoke out against the murder that's been going on. The murder of these poor innocent babies. That's my sin, not speaking out. My eyes were filled with tears, and I was holding on to Jesus' feet, laying face down. And I felt that he had forgiven me. And then I was back. But my eyes were still filled with tears. They were running down my face. It was such a terrible thing to witness. So, I want to make a few comments and read a few verses for you. So first, I've written down 3 questions that really need to be asked. The first one, do you really think that the baby that's growing inside of you isn't a human being? The second, do you really consider your child just trash to be killed and thrown out if it's inconvenient to you? And the third one, at what point do you think your fetus really is known to God as a person? Well, I have some news for you. You see, God knows each and every one of us before we were ever formed in the womb. Psalm 139:16 says this, "Your eyes have seen my unformed substance, and in your book were written all the days that were ordained for me, when as yet there was not one of them." So abortion at any stage is murder. And Exodus 20:13 tells us, "You shall not murder." To top it off, killing another person is destroying something that's special in God's eyes. We find that in Genesis. Genesis 1:27. God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female, he created them. And then we jump to Genesis 9:6. Whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed. For in the image of God he made man. You need to know that God has thrown the gauntlet down. In Deuteronomy 30:19, God says this, "I call heaven and earth to witness against you today, that I have set before you life and death, the blessing and the curse. So choose life in order that you may live, you and your descendants." God told me one other thing while I was in this vision. It was this: these girls who do this are locked in prisons that they have created for themselves. And the hope, the only hope, is this: Jesus is the only key. You know, the ABCs of salvation will be found in the description box below this video. I pray you look at them before you make the terrible decision to murder your child.